Breaking right now, the true feelings of Prince Philip on the day of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's wedding have been revealed, just as the duplicitous Duke launches a new PR stunt in his grandfather's name. This one is sick. I'm going to take you through it. But first, can I just remind you of the royal family on the day of Harry and Meghan's wedding? Because let's be honest, they were hardly hiding their absolute horror at these nuptials. But Grant Harold, a royal butler of 7 years for King Charles, he worked at Highgrove from 2004 to 2011, has revealed in a bombshell new book what really goes on inside the royal household. But the most astonishing revelation is about what Prince Philip said upon leaving the chapel at Windsor Castle that day when his grandson had just married the American actress who he always believed should just remain a little bit on the side. This from Grant Harold's new book. Watching the family file out of the ceremony, which included the famous 14-minute sermon by Bishop Michael Curry, Harold claims in the book to have overheard a few choice words on the lips of the late Duke of Edinburgh. Once all the formalities were over, we watched as the happy couple and then the other members of the royal family filed out of the church, he writes. When Prince Philip came out, he turned to the Queen and said, "Thank fuck, that's over." And didn't we all feel the same? Brittany, editor of the Royal News Network, joins me now. Brittany, we're going to get into some of the other details from Grant Harold's book, but what do you make of this? Prince Philip on the day, it wasn't really his cup of tea, but I think we also just have to appreciate the fact, Brittany, he was a very elderly man by this point, and he had gone through huge efforts in terms of his physical health just in order to be at the ceremony, and you could argue that he did that for his grandson, Prince Harry. Then when you get this quite modern ceremony, which was out of touch for the royal family, the very, very long sermon, it's hardly a surprise that Prince Philip felt that way, is it?
No, definitely not, Dan. And Prince Philip always said it as it is. And that's his full reaction was, it's like, I'm done. Thank goodness this is over. Let's go back inside. I can find a comfier chair to sit in. And we do just have to appreciate the long-standing service of Philip. And I think both the Queen and Philip were just looking at this whole situation going, we hope this works out well. But I think everybody saw the warning signs, everybody saw the red flags, and people were just, to their benefit, I think in some ways, trying to give Meghan the benefit of the doubt. Of course, it went hugely sideways, but I'm sure everybody was just relieved to have the whole thing over, hoping maybe Meghan's, Bridezilla would calm down, although then she became Duchess-zilla. So that just continued on and on. But Prince Philip, you just gotta love him. He just says it as it is. He has no airs in many ways, and so you just gotta appreciate him.
And he always knew that Meghan Markle was inappropriate, an inappropriate showgirl. He didn't have a problem with Harry having a dalliance with her, but he never thought that she was appropriate to marry into the royal family. And I think you could argue he was right, because what I think is so fascinating, Brittany, when you think back to the royal wedding, is actually the royal family were well ahead of most of the public. They knew what a nightmare Meghan was before most of us did.
New reports are resurfacing a brutally candid line the late Prince Philip is said to have shared about Meghan Markle. Thank the Lord, that's over. At the same time, Prince Harry is back in the spotlight with what critics are blasting as another choreographed PR play. 2 storylines, 1 message. The royal fault lines aren't healing. If anything, they're hardening. Reminder, these quotes and claims are reported not on the record from Philip himself.
Very true. And I think when you look back at Meghan and sort of all the red flags and warnings, I mean, there's a reason why those are there. And there's a reason why, royals, sometimes it's best maybe to avoid people who are in show business or people with a past like Meghan. But I think the whole royal family saw that she was really in this only for the title and the money. I think they knew that this was going to end badly. They knew Harry was just wrapped up and high on the Megzilla, and he just couldn't see truth. And I think everybody tried to warn him against Meghan. He just would not listen to anyone. And the royals were like, We've seen this side of Meghan. We're hoping it's just a phase when in fact it was her real personality the entire time. And Harry, much to his discredit, adopted much of his wife's personality and terrible habits in dealing with staff as well. Harry became, a monster with her in many ways. And so again, it all comes down to Harry and the poor royal family. You have to admit they were probably really hoping this would work, and it just didn't.
Yes, and I think we should never forget, Brittany, that Prince Philip's very subtle nickname for Meghan Markle was DOW. That stood for the Duchess of Windsor. Of course, the Duchess of Windsor was Wallace Simpson. He knew his history, and he was right. He may not have lived to see it all play out, but he was absolutely right. And I think it's particularly sick, Brittany, given we know Prince Philip's true feelings, that Harry has decided to use his grandfather in a VJ Day publicity stunt. This, of course, leaked to Cameron Walker of GB News. Now, he's the little Omid Scobie-like twit who's totally there to do the propaganda job these days for Harry and Meghan. Totally bizarre that GB News has gone down that path, but there you go. This headline story, Prince Harry's secret tribute to Prince Philip revealed as Duke of Sussex's letter placed at memorial. Now, the leak to GB News, the Duke of Sussex asked a friend to discreetly place the letter and a wreath at the Burma Star Memorial in Staffordshire. So why do we know about it if it was so secret? Because they leaked this news to GB News. And within the letter, Prince Harry said, "For me, this anniversary carries an added layer of meaning. My late grandfather, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, served in the Pacific Campaign. He spoke with quiet humility about those years, but I know how deeply he respected all who stood beside him in that theatre of war. Today, as I think of him, I think also of each of you, of the shared hardships, the bonds forged, and the legacy you leave." But as you posted on this, Brittany, Prince Harry's pitiful attempt to cosplay as a royal by leaving a pointless letter to veterans and evoking the memory of his dead grandfather despite his cruelty towards his family on his wife's behalf rings as wildly hollow, hypocritical PR stunt. He should stick to playing video games like he did while serving. No one wants to hear from Bunga Harry about service and sacrifice when he only serves himself and his wife. And to that, Brittany, I say, hear, hear. And shame on GB News for becoming this propaganda machine. It's like no one believes that Harry placed this there secretly, because if he did, the news would never have emerged.
Right. And why even place it in the first place? I mean, it's just obviously a PR stunt. He got a willing stooge to go out there and set this letter down. And it's just so, I think, heartless and cruel and so many things for Harry to evoke the memory of his grandfather, to try to somehow say, oh, I know somewhat of maybe what you experienced, or talking about sacrifice when serving is sacrifice, and serving in the royal family is a sacrifice, one that his grandfather willingly made for decades. And Harry, as soon as his wife was like, oh, it's too hard, Harry, he scampered off and is just going off to fulfill and get his own million. So this guy knows nothing about sacrifice. I think because of the Invictus Games, Harry somewhat gets high on their experiences and somehow equates it to his own. So I think he lives in a level of delusion about his own military service. And Harry just needs to give this up. He left for very selfish reasons. He can have the Invictus Games, whatever, but stop doing this cosplay royal routine. It's tiresome. It's very tedious, and it's very, very annoying because he's not a royal anymore. He's a Hollywood producer, allegedly.
Allegedly. I think that's a very big allegedly.
If you know anything about the Duke of Edinburgh, you know he didn't sugarcoat. He was old school. Duty, loyalty, service. So the alleged remark fits his no-nonsense profile. To a man who stood at the Queen's side for 70-plus years and weathered every palace storm, the Sussex saga, Oprah, Spare, The Netflix outpourings, serial lawsuits, looked less like modernizing the monarchy and more like a rolling migraine. If he truly said it, odds are he wasn't taking a swipe at one person so much as calling time on the chaos.
And of course, we also had leaks, and I believe these are leaks, again, Brittany, with people who are close to Prince Harry, who are trying to find a way to ingratiate him, to bring him back into the royal story. Post to the Sunday Times over the weekend over a new row involving the Duke of Westminster and the christening of his first daughter. So it's Roy and Nika who put this out there. William and Harry's closest friend, the Duke of Westminster, is considering whether to make both estranged brothers godparents to his daughter Cosima. William is set to be godfather, but amid ongoing royal tensions, will Harry. And the article makes the point that for many new parents, deciding who to choose as godparents is a minefield. For the Duke of Westminster, one of the closest friends of the Prince of Wales and the Duke of Sussex, it is a particularly delicate dilemma. After his wife Olivia gave birth to their first child last month, Hugh Grosvenor is still considering whether to ask Prince Harry to be a godfather amid ongoing tensions between the royal and his family. Friends of the couple say they have not yet made a final decision, but it is understood Prince William will be a godfather. He is so close to both princes that he is thought to be the only one of their friends chosen to be a godparent by both, so to Prince George and Prince Archie, even though the Sussexes have not publicly named the godparents. The Westminster's daughter was born in London last month. Both William and Harry have sent their congratulations to the couple, who have not yet set a date for Cosima's christening. Selecting both brothers as godfathers to his firstborn would be seen by many in royal circles as an attempt by Grosvenor to thaw the prince's frosty relationship. It is understood that William and Harry have not spoken since September 2022. So that's how it was spun in the mainstream media. But immediately, Tom Sykes, who is the man behind the brilliant Royalist Substack, but also very well connected in these stories, immediately said, this is rubbish. Like, there is no way that Hugh Grosvenor is going to put his relationship with the royal family on the line to try and play peacemaker between William and Harry. His choice is made, and the choice is William. And what Tom Sykes writes is really interesting. He says, the implication seems to be that he may invite both, to which one can only say, channeling Princess Anne, not bloody likely. Yes, Grosvenor is that rare figure, one of the few mutual friends who maintain civil relations with both brothers. Yes, he is godfather to Prince George and to Archie. He may well wish the princes would patch things up. But the idea that he would try to engineer such a reconciliation, that he would presume this decades-deep blood-level feud might be soothed by a double godparent, would leave most of high society slack-jawed with horror. In any divorce, friends, albeit regretfully, have to pick a side. And the British aristocracy, loyal to the crown for generations, has unsurprisingly kept faith with its next holder, William. Hughie, whatever his private sympathies, is not exempt from those dynamics. He is not just a friend of William, he is King Charles's godson. His family has been tied to the monarchy for centuries. Their vast fortune of more than £10 billion is rooted in royal favour from the original 17th century land grants that gave them Mayfair and Belgravia to the 300 prime acres of central London they still own today. The Grosvenors have always known how to stay close to the throne. And I just thought, Brittany, he's completely right. He's completely right. Like, actually, he goes on because he says, imagine the scenarios. Invite Harry and tell William, then there is a real chance the heir to the throne simply wouldn't show. That would be a diplomatic disaster. Invite Harry without telling William. This seems unwise. Even if it didn't leak, which it would, William would be livid and Hughie's position and the royal family's inner circle would come under pressure. So, to me, again, Brittany, this feels like Prince Harry's team trying to bring him back into the circle, trying to put pressure on Hugh Grosvenor to actually invite him. Whereas just like the wedding, the reality is the Duke of Westminster will choose the heir to the throne, the future king. He will choose William.
Oh, of course. I thought this story, Dan, was totally bizarre when I read it. I was like, what? Why would a christening be the best place to try to mend a family relationship, one that you're not even attached to. I mean, it just doesn't even make any sense, especially to pick both brothers. I would assume that Hugh and his wife would like to have another child. So, you could have William for one, Harry for the second. That's generally how it goes in most royal circles. And so I just found this to be completely and utterly bizarre and a very, very strange set of like a story. I don't understand where it's coming from. And I agree with Tom. I just don't think Hugh would go down this path. I think he'll choose the brother who actually went to his wedding. If you remember, Harry did not go to Hugh's wedding. And so I think that when it comes to the first child, William is the obvious choice. I don't know why he would go elsewhere. And honestly, I've always been under a bit of the assumption that Hugh and William are closer than Hugh and Harry. And so I just have a sense that being closer, Hugh would choose William. Like, why would that be a surprise? I don't quite understand. If it's Harry and Meghan's team or Harry's team pushing things to try to get back in, this is not the way to go, especially if you're putting words in somebody else's mouth. People just cannot stand that.
Phillip embodied the institution. Meghan and Harry built a brand. That's the core collision. The Duke's world prized restraint and sacrifice. The Sussex era has prized visibility and narrative control. Interviews, docuseries, and strategic leaks are currency in Hollywood, anathema in Windsor. So when that "thank F, it's over" line ricochets through the press, it reads like a verdict on years of drama that dragged the crown into a culture war it never wanted to fight.
Absolutely, but this is the strategy, and this is the strategy that we see constantly play out at the moment. Like with the royal peace talks, I think it will fail, but I think we're going to see a lot more of it because Harry's UK team is very much on manoeuvres. Very, very much on manoeuvres. We're seeing that at the moment. Brittany, I've got to ask about William and Catherine and this revelation in The Sun over the weekend that they will be moving to Forest Lodge in Windsor Great Park. They've decided to do this because Adelaide Cottage, where they currently are, is very small, but also there's a lot of bad memories there. And that's Adelaide Cottage, but then you look at Forest Lodge and it is a house fit for a king. But there's been a lot of pushback, Brittany, a lot of pushback over this. And actually we can see inside the house here, and it got these renovations in 2001, but it's currently undergoing new renovations to prepare for the arrival of William and Catherine and their 3 children. But I found a lot of the criticism regarding this unfair because, as we've discussed before, William and Catherine have looked for multiple options that would allow them to stay within Windsor, close to the children's school, and that's especially pertinent if it looks like George is going to go to Eton, which is increasingly seeming like the top option. And they even considered, could there be a wing of Windsor Castle, for example, that would work for them? Now, in the end, Forest Lodge felt like the best option. They're very much making it clear to the public that they're not expecting this to be taxpayer funded in any way. They're going to fund the move themselves. And more importantly, they want to make the point that actually this is what they want their home to be, or their home to stay, even after William becomes king. Now, I think that raises a whole load of other issues, which there does need to be a debate about, like, is the public really accepting of the fact that Buckingham Palace is not going to be home at all to our royal family anymore, that it's going to be a totally ceremonial palace? But in terms of this move, Brittany, there's been a huge amount of pushback. The Mail are really angry because they felt like they were deserved the story, and so they're saying, oh, some people have had to be forced out of cottages nearby, but very much burying the fact that actually those people have been offered other cottages within the Windsor estate. Also a lot of criticism that indeed they just want a bigger house. But I mean, do you have a problem with this? Do you think William and Catherine have done anything wrong here? Because to be honest, I don't really. I think it's a thought through decision that makes quite a bit of sense.
Yeah, Dan, when I saw this story, especially from the Daily Mail's very negative angle, I was really, really surprised because I was like, he's the future king. This is not like a massive mansion somewhere. I mean, it's huge, I'm sure, but this is not like ostentatious or anything. I think it's actually quite a very modest home for a future king. A lot of royals do live in palaces or adjacent to palaces or what have you. And I feel like this move is very much warranted. Adelaide Cottage, even when they moved in and we heard sort of how small it was, and I'm like, I just don't think they're going to stay there for that long. It's just a little bit too small a home, especially as the children start to get bigger and bigger. They have more activities, they want more friends over. And I imagine as well, when Catherine was ill, her mom probably came and stayed with them. And if all the kids had their own room, where did her mom stay? And I mean, she might have stayed elsewhere, but I think this is totally appropriate. It's not going to cost the taxpayers anything. The people who are already on the state in sort of the smaller homes have been moved to at least an equal, if not better, location. And that's always if you're getting sort of part of the grace and favor home, maybe that's what those are. That's always a possibility if you accept that. And so those people shouldn't be super surprised. But I think this is a very smart move. Although I do have to say, in the future, I am going to be a bit disappointed if they don't relocate, at least officially, somehow to either one of the main palaces, Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, or Kensington Palace, because I really feel like royals should be in a castle or a palace, at least if you're king. That's just my personal thought. But I think this is a totally appropriate move.
No, I completely agree with you, Brittany. And I think that's, for me, where there has to be a discussion. And, you know, I am prepared to challenge William and Catherine. Sometimes they need to be. No one is perfect. And, of course, they have a very strong view of where they want to take the monarchy. It's not necessarily completely correct in terms of vision, especially the slimmed down nature. And I totally agree with you. While I have zero problem with this move, I do have a problem with them saying, oh, we're just going to stay in Forest Lodge forever. Well, why? Because such an important part of the British monarchy is knowing, I mean, look at the royal standard. It flies at Windsor Castle and it flies at Buckingham Palace when the monarch is there. And that is such an important connection that we have. And I'm not prepared for William to just say, well, we never want to be in one of those palaces, because yes, you have your country estate, you have your private homes, but there are times when you, I think, need to be at one of those two main castles, like the late Queen was. So, personally, I think there does need to be a debate about that.
And while this truth bomb about Phillip is resurfacing, Harry is at it again. Reports claim he's launching yet another PR stunt, and critics are calling it desperate, tone-deaf, and downright sick. Why? Because instead of focusing on rebuilding bridges with his family, Harry seems obsessed with keeping himself in the headlines at all costs. Whether it's Netflix fluff, recycled interviews, or victimhood speeches, Harry's strategy has become predictable. Keep pushing the narrative of poor Harry, while cashing in on the royal connection he supposedly left behind.
I totally agree, because I think what I see for a danger for William is that he's almost overcorrecting, because I don't think he particularly likes some of the pomp and ceremony that comes with the royalty. I think he thinks some of it is a bit archaic, and that might be somewhat true. But I think the danger for William is that he's almost going to overcorrect and make it so approachable, the monarchy, that it really sort of loses its luster in some ways. You need to maintain the mystique of the monarchy without also looking super out of touch. And this is a careful balance to maintain. But when I think about the other royals across Europe, all of them live in palaces or adjacent to the palace in one way or another. Like, they don't live in small little homes off to the side. That's just not how it works.
But the problem is that Charles, because of the combination of his very serious cancer treatment and the fact that Buckingham Palace is in the midst of these renovations, has almost set a precedent, because no one feels like Charles should be forced into Buckingham Palace at the moment, especially given it's a building site. So I think William is almost trying to leap on that precedent. But I don't know. I think it's risky. Because as soon as Buckingham Palace, and this is the last thing I'll say on this for now, Brittany, as soon as Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle becomes a museum rather than a working royal residence, I think that puts the monarchy at risk. So I think William should think very carefully about this. But look, I want to go back to this book, Brittany, this Grant Harold book, Big Royal Tell-All, The Royal Butler, because it's very rare, of course, that a staff member is able to write a book, and we don't know how he has managed this. Is he taking a risk? Does he have permission? That certainly isn't spelled out in his big launch piece in the Daily Telegraph today, because Grant Harold spent 7 years working as a personal butler at Highgrove for then Prince Charles from 2004 to 2011. And Brittany, it is very unusual, isn't it, to hear from a working member of staff like this?
It is. And you have to remember way back, I think it was in the 50s, the former nanny to Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret wrote a book, and she got kicked out of her Grace and Favor home after that. And so there is a very much a staff kind of code of silence. Both, I'm sure, NDAs require it, but there's also a level of respect and I think understanding as well. So it's a bit of a surprise we have somebody going on the record as a staff member. And so you got to wonder why. We don't know quite the reasons there are yet, but it is very curious. And perhaps it's because it's been so long that he can share stories from, you know, 15 plus years ago, although I'm sure he has connections now as well. But it'll be very interesting to see some of what he reveals.
Well, yes, and let's get into some of it, Brittany, because the book reveals that Grant Harold first met Prince Harry in the kitchen at Highgrove. In fact, met doesn't quite cover it. It was more of an ambush than a meeting. Harold was chatting to his friend, a chef, when all of a sudden Prince Harry comes in with water balloons, which all feels quite horrible. However, he does go on to say that Prince Harry did apologise to him, said, sorry, I'm just being a little bit silly, and then did actually offer to have takeaways with him that night. Would you like a takeaway? You can sit with me as I'm getting one. And he was sure that no was the appropriate response, but Harry insisted he kept him company. We sat in the kitchen chatting while he tucked into his takeaways. And what was interesting about that, Brittany, is it compares with Prince William, who he says is very distant.
As that quote recirculates, Harry's newest public push, critics call it a staged gambit to steer the story back in his favor, has triggered fresh backlash. Polling has trended downward on both sides of the Atlantic. Meghan's splashy ventures keep stalling, and former cheerleaders are quieter than they used to be. The more he tries to seize the mic with carefully crafted moments, the more it underscores the contrast. A lifetime of quiet service on one side, and a couple now accused of squeezing the last drops of relevance on the other. Fair or not, that's how it's playing.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of a wiseness to making, like, not becoming too close to staff in some ways. I think there is a way, because you kind of tend to blur the lines, and that becomes, you know, what is personal, what is professional. If you blur those lines too much, that becomes a bit of a challenge. And so I think William was always cautious to keep things to himself and to keep things private. I'm sure he saw some of what happened with Diana and her former butler, and so he keeps sort of a cautious distance. But it very much sounds like Harry to have water balloons, and then kind of we hear a lot about him sort of wildly kind of going backwards and forwards between different ideas. And so I feel like that's very much of, well, let me throw water balloons at you. Oh, but as an apology, let's get takeout. And it's like, okay, but the butler's not there really to be your friend, Harry, if that's what he was trying to make him into. So it's just kind of a difference of approach, but I can see definitely Williams being the bit more mature and wise choice rather than Harry's, which screams immaturity.
He does push back on a lot of what Prince Harry wrote in Spare as well, by the way, over the relationship between Charles, Camilla, William and Harry, because he says the four of them, I promise you, got on so well. And that's why I don't understand what Harry said. I really don't understand, because I saw them. I saw them having dinners together. I saw them having drinks together. I saw them going to parties together. As Harold remembers, there was no animosity on display. The relationship he observed between Charles and his sons doesn't reflect the one Harry portrayed either. The king used to do things to make them laugh and giggle. So I found that very interesting, Brittany.
Yeah, and I think it's great that Harold is able to share some of this, because I think what we saw from Harry is very much a distorted view of his past. I think because of the manipulations of Meghan in many ways, and obviously he put the words to paper, not her, but I think he has sort of created memories that are very negative when they were actually either neutral or positive. I think because maybe of too much therapy, he really has this very toxic view of his childhood and growing up. And I'm sure, yes, there were tensions. And honestly, William should have had more, because William was the one who was hearing all about the Camilla, Diana, Charles situation from his mother. And so William having more issues to me would make more sense, but we've seen William be the very mature person. But as you spend time with people, they had to get along in many ways. And I think for a long time, we did see them all get along. I didn't see any animosity. I feel like it only erupted once Meghan, I feel like, really scratched on Harry's either his mother wound or what have you. And all of this sort of kind of negative, bitter emotions came out, which I'm sure do exist in some ways within Harry, but I think he was able to manage those much better until he met Meghan. And, you know, say what you will about that, but I think they all got along pretty well. I think William, although I don't think he's very close to Camilla, understands that she is one of the people in their family's life, and he does accept that. And I think there's a great maturity there.
If the line attributed to Phillip is accurate, it cuts to the bone. The institution survived the storm, and the exit was a relief. But Harry clearly hasn't exited the arena. He's still litigating, narrating, and producing. Can any PR pivot outrun a quote that blunt? Or is this just another twist in a very public reinvention? Was Phillip right about Meghan, and is Harry's latest move proof he's spiraling or just scrambling to stay visible? Drop your take below. Hit like if you want the receipts without the spin, and subscribe for more clear-eyed royal breakdowns.